Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at MS Dynamics World. On this episode, we are exploring AP automation for Dynamics 365 F&O from the perspective of an expert who has experienced the technology as both a customer and a consultant. This episode is sponsored by SignUp software, and my guests are Josh Torres of SignUp and Rachel Ackerman of Microsoft partner Code. Rachel has been working with D365 clients for the last year or so at Code, but before that she held several client-side roles managing AX and F&O solutions for Microsoft customers. She shares some of her first-hand experiences with ERP projects, deploying Xflow for AP automation, and how she has transitioned to helping clients full-time. Josh and Rachel also discuss with me some of the best practices that they preach to clients in areas like data capture, workflow design, and other lessons taken from real-world experiences. All right, well, I am here with Josh and Rachel. Welcome to both of you. I'm looking forward to getting into today's conversation, but why don't we start with some introductions? Can you both tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do? So, Rachel, welcome to you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm glad to be a part of the team here. So I'm Rachel Ackerman. I work as a delivery manager at Code. Been using AX or D365 F&O for about 10 years. Started out as an end user, changed more into an admin of the system, and then eventually came onto the consultant side. So love working at Code and getting to spread my wings in the community and grow our client base.
All right, excellent. Yeah, and it's great to have a chance to talk to someone who's been on sort of, I guess, both sides of that world. I think we'll get a little more into some of the details and so forth as we go here. But Josh, let me bring you in as well. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me. So I'm Josh Torres. I help lead our enterprise partner development team here at SignUp Software, the authors of Xflow AP automation. So excited to be here with a great partner in Rachel from Code, as always. And yeah, great to be able to have a great chat here and discuss with you guys. So I've actually worked across both external AP automation ISVs and embedded ones in D365. So my focus is really now on sharing those insights and helping partners and their clients get real outcomes, faster cycle times, higher touchless rates, all that good stuff with the financial process automation solutions in D365.
All right, excellent. Well, let's get into it then. You mentioned external and embedded. You've had experience with both, like you said. How do you explain the key differences to someone who's evaluating their AP automation options?
Yeah, that's a really important question, Jason, to hit right off the bat, I think. So while there are many differences, I would say, of course, the short version is that external AP tools live outside of D365 and really rely on integrations, right, and middleware, whereas embedded automation tools like Xflow live within the ERP itself, right? So think about the same security model, same tables, dimensions, workspaces. So that really matters for, as you can imagine, reliability. You think things like auditability and speed, right? So you avoid sync drift, duplicating data, and really triaging two systems when something breaks, right? And you also, I think it's important to realize that you unlock richer rules-based approval logic because you're really operating on native data in real time embedded within the system of record.
It would be great to hear some examples of how the differences have influenced implementations. Rachel, could I maybe bring you in? So have you seen this from your professional services side or perhaps in the past?
Yeah, for sure. I think, everything that Josh just mentioned is vital. I also, because I was an end user for so long, I like to look at it from that perspective quite often. And I think seeing an embedded option versus, an outside D365 option, from a user's perspective, the embedded option is much easier to adopt. The change management is much smoother. The UI feels like D365. It feels familiar to them. It's not a brand new system that they're learning, so to speak. So it's just a part of the system they haven't used yet in some ways. So I think having that perspective just from their visuals alone makes the embedded option so much more valuable and just easier to get along with in the long run.
Yeah, Josh, any other, detail you can give to this? I'm thinking especially in terms of like maybe do companies sort of do a feature for feature comparison or a user experience rating comparison when it comes to embedded versus external? Or is there any other way that you see companies evaluating this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that if you really look at the options here and make an evaluation, I mean, there are, of course, as Rachel just mentioned, and I did previously a little bit, I mean, there are many advantages, right? When you look at embedded, and it really wins in a lot of ways when you want that end-to-end control inside D365. But it is important to consider all the options, right? And so I do think, Jason, that external can still make sense if you're, for example, doing something like consolidating multiple ERPs into one AP layer, for example, temporarily, or you have non D365 estates that you must serve in parallel. But if D365 is the system of record and your organization is investing in the Microsoft platform and you want to really be able to capture that maximum ROI, embedded is usually just the straighter path to touchless AP every time.
All right, excellent. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. So Rachel, let me turn back to you and sort of your journey from, like we already mentioned, from the end user side to now being a consultant and an advisor to customers. When you started with D365, I think you've said you've also had experience with Xflow from SignUp Software. Can you talk about that transition that you made from the customer side to the service provider side?
Yeah, for sure. So worked at an oil refinery is where I first got introduced to AX. We did a re-implementation to D365 F&O. And so that's where my first exposure to Xflow was and invoice, OCR and all that sort of technology. We adopted them as part of our processes there. So I started out that project as an SME, just a general end user that was kind of helping build scenarios and things for testing in that project. But they came to me and asked me if I would help project manage the procure to pay and the order to cash processes for that project. So with that was documenting all those end-to-end processes. We had about 500 users at the time. And I got to really learn about Xflow from our perspective and how we were processing hundreds of thousands of invoices annually and how seamless it was going to be and the steps that we needed to take to get there. And I joke, I say the bug bit me at that point. We got through that project. Of course, we kicked off in 2019. And then, of course, 2020 happened and we went virtual, which was sort of almost unheard of at that point, doing a complete re-implementation completely virtual, but we really didn't have an option at that point. So after we got through that project, I said, oh my gosh, people get to do this all the time. And they get to talk to these great partners like Josh and SignUp now and work with all these people and learn even more than just the one system. You can build and grow and your knowledge is just ever expanding all the time. So from there, I switched over to the admin side, went to a healthcare system. And I was their admin for about 3,700 users. They also were already using Xflow. So it made sense for me to be the admin there. And again, I kept learning and I kept, seeing how Xflow could work in all these different industries and how D365 was working in all these different industries. And then so I finally, just 9 months ago, actually made the jump to Kafka Code on the consultant side. And I've really lucked out. I've got people like Kelly and Brittany and Justin that I get to learn from, and they're helping me sort of grow and got a blog now, and I'm getting to do these type of things. And so when I made the jump from end user admin to the consultant side, there was an intent. I sat down and I said, I want to stay in D365. This is what I want to do all the time. And there was an intent to sit down and find that, perfect role for me to get me onto this side and keep me learning. And I think the right decision was made. I've just had a blast working at Kafka Code so far. So working with Josh and SignUp now and the team there, among other ISVs with other, needs, and getting to see the client's face light up when we present an option that works, whether it's out of the box or through an ISV. It really excites me and I just love that. So definitely made the right choice to come to this side.
That's super interesting. And I can certainly see how you made your way to the services side of things, given sort of the broad range of responsibilities you were taking on in these different, industries and different systems. Anything that's surprised you about the services role so far?
I think it's the same side of two coins. I sort of doubted myself in the beginning and how much I had really learned as an end user. And then the other side of that is how much I still have to learn. So it's wild to see how much I really do know just from being an end user to an admin, how much I can apply and help other people, whether it's coming up with the right process or making their processes better. All that knowledge that I really have gained over the years, it's comforting to see that being put to work. But then, how much I still have to learn. I mean, I'm learning new stuff every day, we're working on an implementation with Josh's team now with a customer, and I'm learning new stuff every day about what Xflow can do and how else it can be used in the processes. And the same goes with, just standard out of the box processes too. There's a lot of pieces to the system in D365 that either just aren't turned on or people don't know about. So it's exciting to be able to do that and still continue to learn, not being at the edge of what I know, right? Still getting to expand.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. And I wanted to move into another topic here, and that's specific to Xflow. It's the Xflow data capture solution and how to make sure it's trained well, because I know this is like a key part of deploying an Xflow solution, right? And you guys call it EDC. So what is training EDC all about, and why is it so critical for AP automation? Josh, do you want to take this?
Yeah, happy to start that, Jason. You're right. It's really critical, right? So capture quality really sets the pace for everything downstream, right? But we treat, I would say, Xflow data capture, or EDC, and that capture process and that training as a day one activity, right? It's not phase two. It's not an afterthought. I mean, the moment that invoices start flowing into your test environment, we're training together, we're doing the learning. And so the time spent upfront there is really time that you get back in production. And I'm sure Rachel has plenty that she would add to that on the implementation side.
Yeah, no, I agree, Josh. I had typed up, it's the cornerstone to everything that's going to follow. It really is. Whether you're talking about doing automatic posting or bypassing verification, training the EDC and the automation that follows and being consistent, like Josh said, from day one, that could not be stressed as more important. It really, really is. And like he said, the UAT, taking advantage of that UAT training, because that UAT training is what's going to follow you into production. And you're not going to have to redo it then at that point. That is just vital.
Is that a performance related tip there, Rachel, or are there other recommendations you would have?
I think it's definitely performance. But then another recommendation is the people that are doing the training in the UAT, the people that are going to be doing it, when you're in production, those are people that you would call your subject matter experts, your SMEs, people who care about the process and getting it worked to correctly. Getting the people that will stay consistent, because that's also a big part of this is consistency. And when you get something trained really well, you can lock it. So you don't have to kind of keep reinventing the wheel and going through all that. Having those people involved from day one, like Josh said, to get those trainings going, and then keeping an open mind to new ways of doing things, as opposed to trying to restructure a new system to do what you've always done. Just keeping that open mind and letting the automation help drive your processes is really important as well.
Yeah, Rachel, I think you're right on the money there, right? And so I'd say probably one of the most common mistakes, and I think we're both kind of circling it here, is that treating EDC and capture as an afterthought or an IT task is setting yourself up for failure, right? So this should really be, like you said, a finance-led effort where you invest the energy upfront in testing and training so that your go live and beyond is set up for success.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I know it's great to hear that kind of specific recommendation. So hopefully people listening take that to heart, because I certainly hear what you're saying there. Let's talk about implementations more broadly. So what are some of the other factors for a smooth AP automation implementation, or maybe some pitfalls? I don't know who wants to take this one first.
I guess I'll mention a couple of things. Document everything. The SignUp Now team does a really good job at documenting configurations and things like that. But when you start talking about your testing scenarios, document your positive scenarios, your negative scenarios. I would say test to the point of exhaustion. You want to find everything that can be found. We always joke we're trying to break the system, right? While we're in UAT testing. I think that's crucial. And then, of course, discovery and data cleansing are also part of the crucial first steps, making sure that your data is, if you're bringing anything in, that it's cleansed. And then, discovery, being able to identify those scenarios. And that's a really big team effort there. That's not one or two people that, might be managers. They're not the technical people in the weeds. You really want those tactical, everyday people that are processing your invoices. You want them to be involved in developing those scenarios, because those are the folks that know, where the catches are and the gotchas and all those things that are going to cause problems as you get into UAT testing then that we didn't maybe think about in the beginning. So having those people involved from the very beginning to get their opinions is a must, in my opinion.
Yeah, Josh, anything you would add?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rachel covered it really well there, but I think one other thing I would add is just making sure that you have decision rights and approval logic really defined early on, right? So if your delegation of authority, your tolerances, allocation rules, all of those are clear, well thought out, and data driven from the start, everything else I would say just goes faster, right? From configuration, testing, user adoption, and beyond.
Yeah, Rachel, can you share any either examples or recommendations from your real life experience, on either side of the fence, I guess you'd say, when it comes to designing AP automation workflows and how to do it successfully?
With SignUp now and Xflow in particular, they've got pretty wide range of ways that you can set up workflows, and they've got some templates that, they can help you follow. But I guess I would probably say it doesn't always have to be, 30 people involved in your approval process. So, stepping back and taking a logical look at really what the bulk of your approval process is and what makes the most sense for the most people. And then having those one-off maybe exceptions that you have to manage then at that point, because the ultimate goal of any automation is managing by exception, right? You're trying not to touch every single invoice that comes through. You're only touching the ones that have problems or have special circumstances around them. So I think approaching your approval workflows like that as well, what is going to be the fastest path to approval? What can automatically be approved? How can you identify those things? Because again, with bypass verification, automatic posting, if it can sail through approval processes, you become very, very efficient then at getting those invoices through the system and your bills paid on time or early in some cases to take advantage of those discounts that you might get that you weren't getting before. So not always trying to make it as difficult, I think, as some folks' workflows are today would be beneficial.
Mm-hmm. It's a great point. And I mean, it's easy to understand the reasoning there, but I can imagine that has led to some spirited debates that you've taken part in or that clients have had to reach a resolution on how they're actually going to do some of that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it ultimately is the client's decision, right? I mean, as a good partner to both SignUp Now or on the client side, presenting all of the options and making an educated recommendation based on that current client's needs is always, what we'll do. We'll make the best recommendation in our minds for them. But if, as a business, they decide to go a different route, that's totally doable. That's what we're here to help them do. We're not going to ever put our foot down and say you have to do things a certain way. But we've been there. We've done that. We've seen some examples that we can give them. And I think ultimately is just being able to work together and SignUp specifically and their software is a really good piece of software to help that client get to that end goal, kind of no matter what it is, whether it's a simple approach or whether it's maybe a little bit complex. I haven't seen anything yet they've not been able to tackle.
All right, great. And yeah, Josh, this is really what your team is totally focused on day in and day out, working with different kinds of Dynamics 365 customers. When you look sort of long-term at customer success, what are some of the results that you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, really, there's a number of real world outcomes that we've seen and our customers tend to expect, right? And I think that it's really important to be able to measure those KPIs and those outcomes, both defining them from the start and then measuring them and leveraging our solution. If you choose to invest in it, can certainly help you with that as well. But seeing how that's paying off, right, in the real world here. But I would say, Jason, some of the outcomes customers can tend to expect are, having touchless rates where they're really not having to do much intervention at all with their invoices. Often that's going to hit 75 up to even 90%, right? 3 out of the 4 invoices that flow through, you're going to have really no or very minimal manual touch. Cycle times, right, typically drop from weeks to just a few days or even a few hours, especially for your standard kind of highest volume, really well-trained vendors. Again, getting EDC trained early from the start kind of helps there and helps the rest of the process downstream. Full-time employee savings, right? So in headcount, right? So those tangible benefits, right? So you can take your existing teams typically without having to add headcount and help, make those teams more efficient, right? So supporting around 3 to 5 times, I would say, is pretty common. Higher invoice volumes without increasing that headcount, which is just massive savings and improvements and efficiencies for those teams. And of course, on the other side of it's around error rates and fraud, right? And so ensuring that you're not duplicating payments or missing discounts or, having any kind of mismatches, right? Things that can really drop your efficiency, stall your process, set you up for potentially liabilities and risks around compliance. which we can certainly help with and make, of course, your audits much easier as well. So lots of examples, Jason, that we could go over, but those are, I think, some of the key ones that jumped out to me.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to maybe leaving, or not go back to, but I wanted to maybe leave our listeners with some advice and some more guidance, since I have you both here and you've both seen so much in this space. For companies that are maybe just starting to investigate AP automation right now, we've mentioned some of the really important concepts, embedded versus external, and some of the other points about what you need in a team that's planning a deployment. Rachel, is there anything else that you would point out about the journey that you would recommend to an organization?
Yeah, I think it's important to demo at least 3, options for your invoice AP automation. There are probably hundreds of options out there, honestly. But having a firm understanding of the differences. So if you demo more than 1 or 2, you're going to be able to see embedded, you're going to be able to see external. You might even review invoice capture through Microsoft, right, as an option. But I think it ultimately helps you make a very well-informed decision, and it lets you see the differences, whether they're good or whether they could be, a little bit more of a struggle. And it depends on what your must-haves are versus nice-to-haves versus, maybe someday in the future type thing. But I think being able to investigate and demo and make an educated decision on the choice is probably what a lot of people skip doing. They take, maybe 1 or 2, or they say, oh, we don't want to go ISV at all. We only want to do embedded, or, we only want to do standard out of the box type functionality. And that may not be the solution that's going to work best for you. Or you may find a solution that is just completely overkill or too complicated to work, or it's not going to work with your customizations, or, there's a lot of stuff going on in these different ISVs. So being able to at least demo 3 of them and get some really solid questions answered from those teams to help you make an educated decision would be my highest recommendation.
All sounds very sensible and good advice. Josh, anything you would add?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that, Jason, is really just to define what good looks like, right, in numbers. So look at things to target like touchless rates and exception SLA and cycle times, and then really design your delegation of authority, your tolerances, your allocations, all those variables to hit those numbers, right? So, I like to say, if you don't set the scoreboard, you can't win the game. So it's important to define those key metrics up front as sort of the North Star and measure those. And then you'll know where you stand going into it and what your outcomes really look like, and measure that back to your ROI.
All right, very good. Josh, let me keep it with you here. Is there anything else you want to leave our audience with? Either any resources you want to call out? We'll, of course, be leaving some information in the show notes for anyone listening. But yeah, anything else you would mention before we wrap things up here?
Yeah, I would say, well, of course, first and foremost, if you're in the market for either deploying D365, you're investigating the ERP itself, or you're a D365 user and need extensive thought leadership and trusted advisor for best practices throughout your organization, whether it be AP, finance, or beyond, certainly reach out to Rachel and the Code team. They're absolutely great to work with and have just so many trusted experts that are an asset to any organization. So have a great partner. That's one. Of course, there are others, but make sure that you've got the right group around you. And then I would say also, if you are really investing in the Microsoft platform as an organization, and that's your go forward strategy, then keep it inside D365, right? Where your data, your controls, and people already live and work every day. So really embedded solutions tend to be best fit for that use case. And we here at SignUp Software offer a plethora of solutions for both AP automation and Xflow, as we've discussed today, across many others embedded into supply chain and operations, and the list goes on. So we'd be happy to work with anyone to kind of look at those options and see how embedded solutions can help your organization.
Rachel, any parting words from you?
Same sentiment for Josh and the SignUp team now. They are absolutely great to work with. And I can say that from both an end user perspective and an implementation perspective. I got to know a lot of the team members on the end user side, and those same folks are helping me now on the implementation side. And it's just been wonderful getting to know them and see how great that team is. So yeah, definitely, if you're looking for that AP automation, SignUp now should absolutely be on your list to review, and reach out to us at Code. We can help set up that demo time. we can help you implement and support from there as well.
Yeah, Josh, any calls to action, anything else you want to mention before we close out?
Yeah, I would say if any of this sparks any interest, definitely reach out. Happy to engage anytime, anywhere. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of, Jason. My email address is pretty easy to remember. It's josh.torres@signupsoftware.com. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Check out our website, signupsoftware.com. We're here to help.
Well, thanks to both of you for being here. Really fun conversation. I'm sure our listeners learned a bit from both the customer and the implementation and the technology side. So thanks again to both of you.
Yeah, thanks, Jason.
It's been a pleasure. Appreciate it, Jason. Thanks, Rachel.
This has been another episode of the MSTW podcast. My thanks once again to Josh and Rachel for joining me. And this message from SignUp. If you'd like to learn more about AP automation in Dynamics 365, visit signupsoftware.com or connect with them on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to their partner CAF2Code at caf2code.com. That's CAF2code.com for implementation insights and support. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jason@msdynamicsworld.com. For all of our insights, please do follow us on LinkedIn. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.